Hi everyone, it's Carolyn from True Crime Chat with Mommy Ramblings, and I'm here to discuss the phone calls from the Weld County Jail, the ones that were made in person between Chris, Ronnie, Chris and Cindy, and Chris and Jamie, the night before Chris officially accepted his plea deal in court. So they had flown up there and they had made a visit. They did not get to touch him or hug him or anything like that. They had to sit behind a petition and they spoke on those little phones. So I'm just going to discuss those calls because I just want to give you my impression of them, and we'll see if you agree or you don't agree. Let's take a look at what I thought about them. On November 5th, 2018, the night before Christopher Lee Watts officially pled guilty to the murders of his pregnant wife, Shanann, 34, and daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste, his family, Cindy, Ronnie, his father, and his sister Jamie, paid him a visit. They were not able to touch or hug, but they spoke through a panel via phones. Cindy Watts was not okay with Chris taking the plea deal. She wants him to fight. There's not much she could really say on the phone because she knew they were being recorded. In media interviews, however, she said she didn't understand why he was pleading guilty and that she would fight. So let's go to this Weld County Jail, and I'll give you a little synopsis of what the calls entailed for for all three of them: Cindy, the mother, Watts, Ronnie Watts, and Jamie Watts. Okay, Ronnie is the first one that speaks with Chris. Again, they sit with the divider between them. They speak on phones. Ronnie has a little bit of a cold, and he coughed several times without covering his mouth, which really made me quite ill. He's wearing a yellow shirt and one of Chris's Steelers jackets. He tells Chris that he got a fresh haircut. And I noticed something with Ronnie this time. He seems kind of vain. He didn't even want to put his glasses on. He was talking about how the jacket looked on him, his haircut, and at the end, he's picking his teeth with a toothpick, but then he starts mugging for the camera. It's really odd. Very strange. Ronnie, we know from the interviews that he mumbles and he was talking very low then. This time he's talking like a mile a minute. He still mumbles, but he seemed to pick up the speaking style or phrases from Randy Jackson. He must have used the phrase "Lord have mercy," which I thought he picked up from John Stamos in Full House, almost incessantly. He also uses the word "ite," "ite," for right, but I didn't even know anybody used that anymore. At times, the way he gushes over Chris makes me actually feel uncomfortable. It is weird, really, really weird. So when Ronnie comes in, you know, he says, "Look at you," and they start talking, and then Ronnie says to Chris, "I hear you got a sports person to talk to," and Chris says, "Oh, here everyone likes sports." And then he talks about Amy, which is his legal counsel. So he says, "I think Amy likes sports too." "Oh yeah." And they start talking about football. And then Ronnie says, "I heard you're helping someone else with the fantasy football team." And Chris says, "Yeah, if she'll listen to me." I don't know who they're talking about at this point. And then Ronnie just goes, "Oh, I love to see you smile." Chris says it doesn't happen much. And he tells Chris, "We're going to be here as much as we can. I love to see you." And, just, it's a little bit crazy. So So he says to Chris, I got a little haircut too. And then he tells Chris, move over to your right. Chris moves the wrong way. He says, no, the other way. Okay, there you go. And he's just looking and staring at him. I see you good now. And then Chris is like, it's like FaceTime or something. How was your flight? And then Ronnie tells him that they were late. They almost missed the flight. And when they got on the plane, they all had to sit separately. And they had to sit like in these middle seats. And he said, he told them, calm down, I will get you there. We're not going to miss the flight. And then he was talking about, he'll stop and you look good, boy. So good to hear your voice. Lord have mercy. Keep hoping everything's going to be all right. And then he says, you might see, you never know. He's just, his whole style of speaking, but it's like, Lord have mercy. And then he says, you see this jacket? Oh, yeah, I like that jacket. Yeah, it's nice and warm. It's perfect for this weather. And he said that when they were going through the boxes, I guess, or something that Frank brought to them, I think one of the grandsons he was saying was going to grab it. He said, no, that's mine. And then they start talking about the teams again. And then he says, he asked him about the stuff from the commissary. Are you getting stuff from the commissary? And he says, yes, I am. And he says, oh, yeah, peanut butter? Yes. And let's see, he said the reason they were late for the flight was because one or both of Jamie's kids were sick and they had to tell Tammy something about it. I guess Tammy's whoever watched the kids. He said we didn't leave Tammy's house and she had to tell them something about it. He keeps telling him to keep hoping everything's going to be all right. And then started asking about the commissary stuff. Okay, so, Chris is starting to talk about the food and that he's got some stuff with protein, and Ronnie's like, some peanut butter, and he says, yeah, because I wasn't eating anything when I got here and I lost a lot of weight. I went down to 173, and Ronnie says, oh, you haven't seen that since high school, and he said, oh, since before that. And he must have been a hefty little guy, because high school, starts at like 13, 14? Okay. And then he says, well, that's about all I can talk about. Jamie had a first 40th birthday party, and then he starts talking about the food, the barbecued fried chicken and stuff, and then he says, she's the big 4-0, and, drinking too much, like they were all drinking too much at the party or whatever, and then he says, I got something on my wrist, and it sounds like he got it from the Roberts, they might be neighbors of his, and he said, it's like I said a prayer for you today, and I think God answered me, and he starts getting like a little choked up about it, and Chris is, I don't know, trying to act all, into it and spiritual and stuff about it. And, so they're going on a little bit about that. And what else did they say? Yeah, just about the food, about the protein, and, staying healthy, and just getting the stuff at the commissary, and does he have enough money on the account? If he needs some more money, they'll put it on, just that kind of stuff. Continuing on with the bracelet, he starts reading him the little quote on there. I say prayer for you every day, and it's something to the effect that I think God's heard the prayer. And so he says, I wear that for you every day. We will always be with you, no matter what. And then he starts talking about the VW Beetle they got as a rental car and how they didn't know how to open the trunk, and the people at the rental car place didn't know how to open the trunk until you knew that you had to turn the emblem, because you knew it still wasn't like the really old Beetles where the trunk was in the front. So they found out you had to switch the emblem, and Chris is like, oh, how? You had to flip the emblem, like it was like a really big deal. And then he says, the Subaru Impreza we got is going good. Your mother really likes that. He said she's not missing her Mustang, and he said something like, no, she's not missing her Muskrat. He then says, he starts talking about Subarus, and if I remember correctly, I think Ronnie is working, or was at the time working, at a dealership for Subaru, which I think used to be a Ford dealership. And he said, because he does mention, I wish we still had Fords, and that we see the Subarus all over the place. And at the hotel that we're staying at, there were 4 there. Like, that was a lot. There's so many Subarus here, it's crazy. But anyway, he goes through that, and they just start talking a little bit about cars, and then they keep going back on sports, all kinds of sports, just talking very quickly. And they just keep going, and every few minutes it's Lord have mercy, it's good to see you smile, you look so good, we love you so much, everything's going to be all right, remember that, remember that. hmm yeah. Ronnie goes on to tell him how much work he had to do on his old truck. He talks about the truck for a while, and then again he says, I wish we still had Fords there, we got the Subarus. Talks about the dealership, and then they start talking about the snow up there and chains on the car and stuff like that. He's coughing again, won't cover his mouth. He talks about how he got baptized. And he got baptized, and it was the day before he got baptized, and the water was warm, and he was glad because he had a little bit of a cold. And you know it was a church where Jamie goes to because they have activities for the kids, and all of that business, and that was great. Oh, that's wonderful. And he just said, you're still our son. You have a lot of love and support, son. And Chris says it's hard to really know if there really is out there. And he said, oh, there is extended family and friends, and so many people support you. Remember that on the days you can't smile, because he keeps telling you you're smiling. I love to see your smile. And Chris keeps saying, well, it doesn't happen much. Well, you remember that smile on the days you can't. Um, so just constant stuff like that. Lord have mercy, you look so great, son. Oh, it's so good to see you. You look so great. Gushing over him, and then like sports talk, gushing over him, maybe some car talk, and that's the way it's going. He tells Chris, don't ever forget, you got a whole bunch that people that love you. I know it's hard. Everything's going to be good. Just remember. And then he was like, what else we got to talk about? What else we got to talk about? We talked about race cars, we talked about cars, football, and he keeps going on. And they talked about basketball at that point. He's coughing again, not covering his mouth. Lord have mercy. Then he tells, let me tell you about this guy on the plane. And he talks about this guy on the plane that was like a linebacker, and he couldn't put the armrest down, and the guy was snoring, and he thought if he started snoring, they'd both be thrown off the plane. And then the guy gets a big plate of food. He didn't know where he got it from. And all Ronnie can smell is hot sauce. It's making his nose run. And then he falls asleep, and he has this stuff up on his phone. So he's watching some outlaw show. And he said he was watching it while the guy was asleep. Just lots of stuff about that. And Chris is, like chuckling along and listening to his father's stories. He tells him it's good to see the boy smiling. It's good to see you smiling. And then Chris starts telling him that he's got to have some green chili before he leaves. And this part is really strange for me because Chris says you have to have this if you're in Colorado. You have to have this green chili. And he goes on. And his father's like, you do? You do? So, I mean, was his father ever in Colorado? I know Cindy came to Colorado to watch the kids. But was Ronnie ever in Colorado prior to Chris's confession day? I really wonder now, because wouldn't he have had green chili before if Chris made such a unbelievable deal about it? And then Chris is telling him that the restaurants in Colorado put the ones in North Carolina to shame, and all of this stuff. But he keeps talking to him about the green chili, and Ronnie says, yeah, I'm just going to go get some. Maybe Amy can talk about it. Either can ask her where to get some. And he says, you just don't have it on the day. He goes back on the plane. And then he starts talking about, he just goes into like the dogs, and they get a little bit. And he says, like, we got bipolar a little bit or something. And Monica's watching a little bit, and she's feeding him with a fork. And he told her that dog doesn't need to be spoiled any more than it is. And he goes and he says, if I'm alone with a little bit, snuggle up to me, but if your mother's there, and he goes, oh yeah, that dog hates everybody but mom. And then he started to go, he said something about a Dieter statue at the memorial service. And I think he's saying, I don't know if he was saying there was one there or that they brought one there. I would think it was that they brought one there. And he starts to talk a little bit about the memorial service going well. And Chris says, I hope you didn't get wet. He said, no, it didn't rain, but I guess it was a little cold or windy. Then he asks him what Dalton was for Halloween, and Ronnie's thinking, and he says, "Oh, a zombie hunter." And then Chris says, "Oh yeah, because I know the other one. Yeah, she was a vampire cheerleader. Jamie told me, but she didn't tell me what Dalton was." And you know, it's a real good thing that we're going to see you real soon. We're going to see you face to face, and we'll be able to hug. And they're talking about that, and then he starts doing really the Randy Jackson, love, love, love you, dog, love you, dog, love you, dog, stay strong, love you, dog. I take care. I mean, it's really crazy. And then he starts picking his teeth with that toothpick, and he's mugging for the camera. At that point, he reminded me of someone. I wasn't sure who, if it was someone in real life or somebody I kept seeing like the goatee, and I don't know what it was. It was just I'll probably think of it later, but that was Ronnie. And then he said, your mother's going to come in, and oh boy, she loves you. Trust me, she loves you. She loves you, boy. Okay, so then Cindy is going to appear next. But Ronnie's like talking a little bit. It seems like they can talk to each other. They can hear, I don't know how close everybody's sitting. At one point when Jamie's there, she looks over and says something, and Cindy, it seems like they're talking to one another. But anyway, let's get on with Cindy. Oh, one thing Ronnie said before I get into Cindy, he said that Jamie was in such a rush that she forgot her coat. So yeah, I forgot your coat. You're going to Colorado in the winter. But yeah, so it has to get her a coat somewhere. I'm like, well, that shouldn't be too hard, right? There's stores around there to get a coat. But yeah, she forgot her coat, and it's cold. So yeah. So Cindy comes in. Hi, and hey, you look good. You too, he says. Do you know how much you're loved? Do you have any idea? And then he says, I love you too. We will never, ever, ever abandon you. Do you hear me? She's always got to use ever, 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 like so many times. And it's along the lines of the way they lied about things. I want to give you a hug. And he says, soon you'll be able to. I know, hun. And then she shows him a piece of jewelry. I thought it was a locket, but I think it's like a pendant with their picture in it, hers and Chris. Out on the back, it says something about a mother's love. And she said, this is not what we wanted for you. And she's crying and blubbering. And he said, this isn't what I wanted either. Trust me. Like he always says that, trust me. That just sounds like people do that so much after a lie. I'm a good person. Nobody that's a good person tells you they're a good person. Their actions will show you. Their character will show you. It's so ridiculous. And then she says, I know, hon. I don't know what happened, but I will never, ever stop loving you. Oh boy, Cindy. And he said, I will never stop loving you guys either. And she said, anything you need from us? And he said, just your love and support. Oh, honey, so many people supported you. So many still support you. And I wish I could ask you more, maybe one day. And he says, maybe one day. And then she says, this is what you want? And he said, this is my decision. This is what I've got to do. This nightmare has to be over for everyone, for everybody. This is all me. If this is your decision, then you get in there, she says, and you make something of yourself. Your story doesn't end here. You had a pure heart, a good soul. No one can say anything about you. You were my smart kid. You were my perfect kid. You never even rebelled or anything. You were so conscientious. You are so conscientious. She goes on and on. We will be there for you tomorrow. We will all be there for you tomorrow. And he said, Amy told me you guys felt guilty for going out to eat. I want you to feel like you can live a normal life too. And then she said, oh, for you, if that's what you want, for you, I'll do it. Cindy goes on to say that she wished he would have talked to them more. And he, she said it's all she's ever wanted. And to know you're so loved, your life is not over, and you have got to stay strong because I have got to stay strong, and we will all get through this together. I don't care what you did. She says that a couple of times to him. You are so loved. There is no doubt about that. Your family is here for you, and we will always be here for you. You, me, Ronnie, Jamie, all of us. I love you so much. And she said that they gave them back, meaning she says Frank later, but at this point she says they are going to give us your photos back, your trophies, and they gave us your jerseys. And then he starts talking about, she says some of them still have tags on them. And he says, yeah, that's because I wore this one so much because this guy got hurt. And she said, oh, can you tell Jamie the guy's name so I know? And then she says your photos, and then he says, did you get any pictures from, and she goes, the pictures from the house? Yeah. And she's like, no, they didn't give us anything like that, but there is still stuff back there. And, we'll have to see, but I don't think they gave us anything like that. So then it sounds like she says something about Mama's ashes and that his grandmother's ashes. Now, I don't know whether he just has a little keepsake urn or he has the entire urn, but he says if the urn is still there, it's on the dresser in the bedroom. And she said, well, oh, I'll have to see if I can go back to the house if I can do that. We'll see. I don't know, but nothing, it doesn't matter, it's okay, you're so important, we love you. And then she says, whatever we get from that toolbox, meaning selling that toolbox, that's going to help them go visit him again. And then he says, well, yeah, and there's still a snowblower still there. Like, how does he know a snowblower is still there? Like, I mean, what does he know? That's what I'm just saying. Like, he just knows, you know, and then she goes, well, because she even says, well, I don't know. Maybe they took it, meaning Frank and back. And he goes, no, it's so heavy. It's so heavy. You can't move it or something. I was like, what? They could have sold it. I mean, they could, I don't know. It just seems so weird. And then he goes, it's so heavy. I don't even think I ever used it, honestly. I live in Colorado and you never use a snowblower. Okay. It's like one or two times maybe. And then she says, "Oh, we're gonna. Don't worry about it. We'll get there, and we'll get you whatever you need. We support you 100%. You look really good. Oh my goodness." And then she starts talking about the memorial service, and everything was decorated so nicely for Halloween. And she says we bought crosses for each of them, and then she starts talking about that she got a new CD player at Walmart and the CD started skipping, and Monica started saying that's little Cece playing with the CD player, and then they both chuckled about that. And she said, I needed to see my son. And let's see what else she was saying. None of that stuff matters to me. I'm so happy you're okay and you're all good. You really look good. At the service on Sunday, it was so pretty. So then as she's explaining about the CD player, she says, and then an eagle flew over and there were 3 pictures that were taken and each one had a ray of sunshine in them. And everyone sends their love to you. And she starts mentioning like Christina and Debbie and people, and promise me you will stay strong. I can't lose you. I can't lose you. And he, oh yes, and it's just the irony, right? And then he asked her what kind of pictures did she use for the service. And she said, I used one at Cece at the splash pad and the other one at the splash pad where Bella was wrapped up in a blanket and she just looked so peaceful. She was you, Bella. She was you. She was you, she says. And then she starts gushing. Everyone knows what kind of man you were. and Manuar, excuse me, can we come on the 19th, she says. And he says, that's up to you. That'll be a tough day. That'll be a really tough day, he says. And she said, I just want to sit here. I just want to sit here and look at you. You are your dad. You and your dad are so much alike. And then they start talking again about the sentencing and saying that's the week of Thanksgiving. She said the week, and he said, well, it's the Monday. And then they're talking about the sentencing, and she said, I just don't want you to do that by yourself. I don't want you to be there by yourself. And he said, well, that's going to be a really hard day. You know, compared to tomorrow, tomorrow should be pretty short, but that's going to be a long day. It's going to be really hard. And she said, well, Jamie probably won't be able to be there, but your father and I, you know, want to come out there, and just know that people out there, they know who you are, and they know what kind of person you are. And then she says, you know, Ronnie got baptized, your father got baptized. You're the only person that could ever make him do anything like that. Remember how long everyone wanted him to get baptized? You remember Mama wanted him to do that? And, you know, she's like, you're the only person that could do it. You're the only person. And she keeps saying, you know, I love you. He says, I love you too. And she said, I don't think you and I have ever talked this long. It's all I ever wanted. And he goes, I know. And she said, just to talk to me. Just talk to me. It's all I ever wanted. And he's like, mm-hmm. And then that was basically the end of their conversation. And next we're going to have Jamie come in. So Jamie comes in, she's gushing over him too. You look good. And then he's like, hey. And she's like, I like your hair. Let me see all of the gray. And then he asked her how her birthday was, her 40th birthday. And she said, it was really good. I got my face smashed in the cake. And I'm thinking, like, you're 40 years old. You're not a year old. You don't need a smash cake, but okay. And then she's talking about and then he's like, did you get it? You got it smashed in your face? Did you get it in your hair? Because that would be really hard to get out. Like, who guy is thinking that, right? And she goes, yeah, it was in my hair. And then Mom got some on her. Like, what? Mom got some smashed on her? I'm like, well, maybe, well, Ronnie said about the drinking, maybe they were all smashed. I don't know. It sounds really bizarre. I've never been to an adult birthday party where people are smashing cake in everyone's face. Ugh, I don't know. So she says, I had the cake everywhere. Oh, that's what she was saying. And everybody was smashing it. It was in Mom's face. And then it was so much to clean up all over my kitchen floor. And he's like, oh, but it's worth, like, then Chris is like, oh, but it's worth it because it was like so much fun. Or so, you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, it sounds so crazy. And he says, oh, and you got your Jeep? And he said, that's a cool Jeep. So I guess she got a Jeep for her birthday. And she said, you know, even when it's, he said it'll be great. And if it ever snows, you'll love that Jeep and you got to keep the kids away from it. And she said, you know, she was talking about the kids wanting everything and about Santa, and they're starting to find out Santa's not real and it's really Mom and Dad, and they have to do all this stuff, and that the boy wants a Lamborghini for his first car, and she's telling him, no, you're getting your daddy's old truck. And then, you know, there was, what'd she say? She starts talking about the memorial service, and she says it was a hawk that flew over. Her mother said an eagle. And she talked about the CD player incident and said that Monica said it was Cece that was doing that, and that she got these awesome pics, and she took these pics of each of the sites, and they had rays of sun coming through them. She wishes she could show him. Oh, someday soon. Yeah, that's right. We'll be able to show. We'll be able. We're a strong family. We can do this. You're so loved. So as she's talking about the picture, about the rays coming through, he says, well, that sounds awesome. That really helps me picture it. And she says, well, picture it. It's beautiful. And she says, we're a strong family. We love you so much. He says, I love you too. She says, you're going to get so many letters from me, so many. And he's like, hopefully. And she says, I'm going to definitely send you so many letters. I'm going to update you on everything, and I'm going to bore you to death. And, just hearing your voice is so good. And she says, but for the grace of God that we were able to see you. Dad got baptized. That's crazy. You remember how long Mama wanted him to get baptized forever. And she starts talking about the church that they're going to. You don't need any classes. It's come as you are. They just, whatever, as long as you believe, they're going to baptize you. And she said the boys were baptized, a few weeks ago. And he's like, oh, that's a good age to be baptized. Not the boys, her kids, I'm sorry. And then she said, we love you. You look good. You actually look a little younger. And then she said, you hold up your head, keep, hoping and dreaming, and anything can change. Life can change in general. It can change tomorrow. You know that. Of course, look with how everybody else's lives have changed. Families' lives you've destroyed forever. And yeah, wow. And then she says, our love for you will never change. That is what love is. I really wish I could go back to Mom's porch and keep you. And she's talking about the day he spent with them in North Carolina as you listen to this. And he says, me too, trust me. And she said, I felt like God gave us that day. And we just love you. Goodness, well, wherever you end up, we will get to see you. And then she started asking about the commissary, and he said there was a lot of candy options. I wanted to stay away from that stuff, but on Halloween, I got some Oreos and some Reese's Pieces and some drink mixes and hygiene products, real soap and shampoo, and it made me feel a little more human. That's some amazing soap to make you feel human, Chris Watts. And he said they have a book cart that comes every 2 weeks, and he's been picking out spiritual books to go along with the Bible. He read the whole Bible. And then she says, well, when you write me, can you explain the Bible to me? Because when I read it, I don't understand it. And then he says, well, I've read it, but there's like certain books like Numbers, and it just mentions a bunch of names. So I just kind of glanced over that section. But other times I would keep reading one page over and over. There's so many semicolons and commas, like you can't believe it's still one sentence. And she's like, but do you understand it? And she's like, because I don't understand it. I need you to explain it to me because I don't understand it. Oh boy. So then he's saying, yeah, well, a lot of it is insanely long. And she says again, you explain it to me, okay? Please explain it to me. And then he said, the kids like Halloween. And she said, I am over that. I have my Christmas tree up. And you know how I am with that. I waited till the 1st to put it up, but it's up now. And then, let's see, she said, I think I took the tree out of the box the day after my birthday party, but I didn't decorate it until the 1st. And then they started saying something about the holiday food. And he said, but wait, you don't have the Christmas, do you have Christmas lights on the outside of your house? And she said, no, I didn't do that. And he tells her she could put orange lights out there and you could do that. And she really was like, yeah, okay. And then she started to talk about her husband just a little bit, that he's working, he's going back and forth, and he's holding the fort down, though he says he's not as good as me. And then she said, how is your food there? And he started to say, well, we have some breakfast foods. We have a sausage patty. We have ham sandwiches and peanut butter, and then sometimes rice and beans or pasta and beans. And she's like, well, that sounds good. And he's like, you should try to eat it. He said, all the meat has a soy base, so it's not any real protein. And then he said, she said, but yeah, you can get peanut butter sandwich. He said, yeah. And then he said, that is why I say go to what did he say? He said, no, I'm sorry. He said that's why he goes to the commissary and he buys like peanut butter and he tries to have like 2 spoons and close it up. And then at that point, she must have said something, I don't know, about calories or something, because he started to talk to her about whey protein and lean whey protein and don't drink whey protein, you'll just gain a lot of weight. And she said, oh, I don't want that. Could you write it down for me? Yeah, I'll write it down for you. I'll put a plan out. And she said, oh, I'll follow that. I'll follow that. And then he says, but that's why I want you guys to go out. I want you to go out because, you know, the food's so bad here. I want you to eat for me. I want you to sit down in a restaurant and say, what would Chris order? What would Chris order? And she goes, oh my gosh, if I started to eat like you, I'd be a house. And he says, well, just order like me. And she goes, oh yeah, big old plate of ribs. And he's like, I'd always eat a plate of ribs, always, you know. And so yeah, they were just talking about that for a while, food and protein and fitness plans, stuff like that. And then, you know, he says, oh, you're going to have good holiday food. And she said, well, it's the same old food. And he said, well, it is, but it's good. And that he could never get enough of the stuffing. He said, I didn't even eat the turkey. It's always about the stuffing. And she says, you remember Mama's stuffing with the water chestnuts? And then he said, remember, I never left any for anyone else. I want to, and then she said, I want to set it up. I'll probably have to have mom and dad help me, but I want to set it up where you can call me. You can call me too, not just mom and dad. Call me too. And he said, your number is still the same. And yes, they go over her number. And then she's like, just remember, you call mom and dad, you call me too, because I'm here too. And I love you. Um, and she's like, I'm so glad to hear your voice and know you're all right. I'm still here. You look good. Give everyone my love. Oh, honey, you have so much support, she tells him, and that everyone knows your heart and they love you and we love you too. And then she tells him, don't get sad on me. And he's like, I know, I'm holding it back. Trust me. And then she says, one day we'll be able to see each other in person. Oh, yes, that'll be wonderful. We'll be able to really hug. It'll be wonderful. Okay, and she says, you know, you're going to be okay, and I'll give the kids your love. You know, I love you too. And then that was the end of their call. Now, these calls are all much ado about nothing. Do they change anything? Do they change anything? No. Okay, absolutely not. If anything, we see more where the problem exacerbates. This family just exacerbates Chris's problems. Okay, they don't talk about, I mean, the small bit about the memorial service was a very small bit. It was all about how much Chris is loved, how much he's loved. And then the part about, just, I don't know, just some of the things they said, we have to know you are all right. You don't care that your grandkids were not all right, that your nieces were not all right, much less your daughter-in-law. I mean, it's obvious they didn't care about Shanann, but their grandkids? Yeah, and she just wishes she could have that day back on the porch. That sounds like there was something really, I don't know. It's pretty scary to think about that kind of stuff with this family, but yeah. So that's about the size of these calls. It's just gives you a different glimpse and more of a glimpse into seeing their interactions. I mean, he's not even, they're watching their P's and Q's on the calls. You can tell, as Ronnie says, that's all I can talk about. He knows, they know, and that's the way it goes. But yeah, I mean, that's about it. And thanks for watching, guys. Leave your thoughts in the comments. See you later. Bye-bye.